Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, in Bandung, in Indonesia, and good evening. Sorry, my connection is not stable.
Everybody, no? Rich. Silakan Pak Rino. Masih mute.
Yeah, excuse me. My connection is not stable just now. Maybe can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, good.
You're something wrong with your connection.
Something wrong.
Pak Rino at home or in campus, Pak?
Should I take over?
Test. Sorry, Prof. Lee, everybody. So my connection was not stable. So yes, I think it's now okay. Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi in Indonesia and good afternoon or evening in California, USA. Welcome, Professor Chow-Yang Lee from UC Riverside in the virtual event of ITB discussion series on excellence research culture. So today we have a prominent speaker, Professor Chow-Yang Lee. So he's a professor at the University of California, Riverside, who will deliver a lecture in research excellence, how to build the research excellence in the academia. So very interesting topics. So to open up our event, I welcome the rector of ITB, Professor Reni Wirahadikusuma, to give an opening remark. Please, Ibu Reni.
Makasih Mas Rino. First of all, we would like to welcome our esteemed guest, Professor Chow-Yang Lee. He is the professor and endowed presidential chair in urban entomology at the University of California in Riverside, United States of America. Warmest greetings from Bandung. We are very grateful, of course, to have you here virtually. Good morning, Bapak Ibu sekalian, Civitas Akademika ITB, khususnya para dosen muda, peneliti muda. Selamat bergabung, selamat bertemu di acara yang semoga mengikatkan, ya, mengeratkan koneksi kita sebagai warga kampus. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Professor Lee, I would like to introduce to you a little bit about ITB. I hope you've heard a little bit about us from Professor Intan Ahmad.
Oh yeah.
So Institut Teknologi Bandung, we have worked so hard to make a contribution in the advancement of science and technology through our academic and research as well as community engagement programs. Nationally and somewhat internationally also. We just celebrated our 100-year anniversary, and this year in July, in our 101-year journey, we consider ourselves, we have a long standing as the leader in advancing science, technology, art, social, and humanities as well. So it's a long tradition to Indonesian standard. So we are the oldest higher education institution to continue with our tradition. We have to preserve our academic atmosphere, excellent academic atmosphere. So we would continue to improve this atmosphere. We would like to have such discussion as today, a series inviting prominent speakers such as yourself to learn on, to still become an adaptive learning community, particularly on how to build excellent research culture. In understanding research culture, we would like to hear from Professor Lee the importance of networking in academia. We believe that research culture in academic setting is built based on long-standing experience, such as best practices, consistency, dynamic processes, such as our failures and successes. So it is not exaggerated to say that the excellent research culture in university, such as ITB, is the cultural structure based on the behavior of the staff, the students, that allow the excellent transfer of knowledge. The resulting values will give continuation of research activities that come out with the birth of potential scientists and the vehicle for research collaborations among scientists, universities, and worldwide research institutions. We always maintain our network very, it's our treasured asset. This is our treasured asset, our networks. So we have currently about 770 something plus MOU, MOAs with universities and institutions outside of Indonesia, and plus of course hundreds with national institutions. So our networks are very, very important. On the other hand, we also concerned about the quality of our publication, resulting in number of citation. We still maintain our good best reputation in publication, but we have to significantly improve. We would like to focus on strategic topics that may contribute to fundamental understanding as well as innovative research for the improvement of our quality of life and Indonesian economic development. So this webinar is expected to broaden our knowledge, especially for our young scientists. Again, I would like to thank Professor Chow-Yang Lee for accepting our invitation, and also Professor Intan Ahmad, who introduced ITB to you. It should be the start of our long-lasting friendship. So, Bapak Ibu, let's pick up his insights about networking. So the time is yours. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Reni Wiradikusuma, Rector of ITB, for the opening speech. Professor Lee, you may miss my introductions because of the unstable connection. So my name is Rino from the LPPM unit at ITB, the Institute of Research and Community Service. So I'm also a lecturer at the Chemistry Department of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences. So today, the moderator for your lectures is Prof. Brian Yuliarto. So Prof. Brian Yuliarto, good morning. And Prof. Brian Yuliarto actually is the Dean at the Faculty of Industrial Technology. So his major is in engineering physics. So Prof. Brian, so the time is yours for moderating Prof. Lee lecture.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rino, all attendees. So I think as Bu Rector stated that this morning we'll have very interesting speakers very great professor. I will say our speaker is Professor Chow-Yang Lee. He is a professor and Endowed Presidential Chair in Urban Entomology, and also board certified entomologist, both in urban and industrial. Department of Entomology, University of California, UC Riverside, United States. Professor Lee has a bachelor graduate from biological sciences, University of Science Malaysia. He graduated in 1993, so I think he entered the University Science Malaysia at about 1989, yeah.
That's right.
Professor Lee, yes. So in Indonesia, we remember our entry year. Nah, so is angkatan 89 kalau in Indonesia. Still very young ya in our. He got PhD in 1996, also in University of Science Malaysia. He beginning the career as a lecturer in University Science Malaysia, 1996 after PhD, and also he continued and got the professorship in 2006. In 2006, so maybe it's about 10 years, yeah, professor after starting the lecturer, he got his professorship. So I think this is very good example for our young staff in ITB. And then he moved to UC Riverside in 2019. He got so many awards. I think the top research scientist Malaysia 2012, and then the outstanding young Malaysian award 2008, and then National Young Scientist Award in 2000. So I think he's so many high reputation, and I think Professor Lee also visited ITB in
Yes.
ISO, yeah, together with
Yes.
Professor Intan Ahmad. I think we in 2013, yeah, he got a seminar in SITH in one of our faculty here. So please, I give the time to Professor Lee to give the speaker.
Thank you.
Please.
Allow me to share the screen. Let's see, where is it? Okay. Can you see it?
Yes. Very
Okay,
good.
it's clear, right? Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank ITB and also Professor Intan Ahmad who initiate the contacts for this invitation. And it is truly my honor to be able to speak to many of the young faculty members of ITB, as well as also share some of my experience throughout my academic journey, and also what I personally feel it is important when it comes to networking in academia. So this is the outline of my presentation. I will first talk on my academic journey from 1989 to 2019, and then beyond, and what do I think that I did right. So you can, of course, view through some of my experience. It may not apply to everyone. Some portion may be applicable to you. Some other portion may not be applicable to you, because that's very much depending on the field of research as well. Then I will talk on establishing linkages, collaboration, and networking. And lastly, I will speak on what an institution could do to increase excellence among its faculty members based on what I have learned over the last 25 years. So the last portion would be more for the university leadership to comprehend. So I was born in Malacca, in Malaysia, back in 1969. I grew up in Johor, and so it was actually, I grew up in the 70s. Life was very simple. Most of us just have bicycle, and we cycle all over the place with just bicycle. There were not many cars back then. Okay, so in 1989, I registered as an undergraduate student in University of Science Malaysia. So I was given a pure science, to pursue my degree. So I have an option to either choose to major in chemistry, biology, physics, or maths. So the option was open because we are only required to decide at the second year at that point of time. But at the first year of the first semester, I took a course in invertebrate zoology. And the lecturer that was teaching the course was one of the world-renowned professor named Dr. Yap Han Heng. And he has a nickname called Mosquito Yap because he worked with mosquito, okay? So Dr. Yap was giving this lecture, and his lecture actually inspired me, especially when it arrives to the section on insects. Somehow, I was, awed by his lecture on insects. And you can see when a professor is passionate about his field, you can feel it as a student. It's very hard to describe, but when someone is passionate and talks about what his passion is, and the student could feel it. So if you are a professor and you are not passionate about what you are teaching, the student would also feel it. That's for sure. So from there on, because of that lecture, that course that I took, I was inspired by him, and I was determined to pursue my studies in entomology. So I work in Dr. Yap's lab every long semester break, except during first year that I got a chance to spend time in Dr. Tang King Hong's lab. So Dr. Tang King Hong at that time was also a world-renowned researcher in the field of fruit fly research. So, and I also have my academic advisor, who is Dr. Chong, and he taught me, and he told me that you should find and create your own niche. That was the time when I still have no idea what a niche is, okay? But at a very young age, that was probably my third year as an undergraduate student, he told me that I should not live behind Dr. Yap's shadow. If I want to be someone, I should have my own shadow, okay? So I did not fully understand at that point of time what exactly a niche is and what exactly is not living behind someone else's shadow. But in other words, that he told me, it's you should create your own field of research. So because Dr. Yap is so prominent in the field of mosquito research, I choose to work with roaches, cockroaches, okay? Kacua, okay? Kacua in Indonesia. Now, in my third year, I also took a course on environmental zoo physiology under this professor known as Dr. Wong Tak Meng. Now, this is a very tough, very critical, but excellent, very dedicated professor. As part of the coursework, I was required to do an 8-week mini project. And so we are supposed to start from scratch. We have to source all our equipments and everything on our own. We are not given any money for the mini project, but use our creativity to come out with some methods. We have to present our proposal. I got scolded many times by this Dr. Wong for not being critical enough. But this mini project, despite only 8 weeks, it actually directly and indirectly taught me how to ask a good research question, how to design an experiment that could cover up all the gaps. So you know that when doing experiment, I'm sure all the young faculty members would understand, you try to fill up all these gaps because you do not want to get challenged when you are having your defense or when you are presenting your paper. So that's why all these gaps are important. And Dr. Wong exactly taught me how to identify those gaps and also how to be critical and how to spot a flaw in the experiment. So I got a B for this course, despite a B, okay? This is probably the most important course that I have ever taken as an undergraduate student in USM. And Dr. Wong never gave an A in any of his course, okay? So that was how it is. He taught me how to fish instead of where to buy the fishes. So I received my Bachelor of Science in 1993, and I was awarded a gold medal for being the best student in 93. And because of that, that allows me to skip my master's degree. That allows me to go directly to a PhD program if I were to pursue my degree in USM. But in 93, I was also offered a research assistantship to pursue my graduate school in UC Riverside. Okay, so but this assistantship was not sufficient to cover the entire tuition and also living expenses, and it was required to find another 20,000 US per year for that to cover that tuition and living expenses. So because of that, I then decided that I should continue my PhD in USM under the mentorship of Dr. Yap. Okay, it's irony because in 93, I was offered to pursue my graduate studies in UC Riverside, and then I joined UC Riverside as a professor. Okay, 25 years later. So my application to, so I work under Dr. Yap, and I applied to USM for a fellowship that is basically kind of like a funding or an assistantship so that they could pay my salary or my living expenses, but it was rejected. So it's irony, despite being the top and best student, it was rejected. But one afternoon, I saw an advertisement in the notice board of my school, and it was this particular institute, PHP Institute of Asia from Japan, that is offering a PhD scholarship to one each of students from different countries in ASEAN, different ASEAN country. And I received that. I was awarded that fellowship, and then I started my PhD using that money. Okay, so I started the research on insecticide resistance in German cockroaches. This is the little kachua, that I work on, and it's very important. And at that time was the hottest topic in pest management, and still is a very hot topic until today. Now, with exception to a paper that was published in Japan in 1988, but very little is known about this issue. So I spend days and nights essentially in the lab. I will arrive to the lab around 7 in the morning, and then I will leave around 10 at night. So I try to hunt down. Do you hear echo?
No, it's clear.
No, it's
okay,
clear.
okay,
No problem.
okay. So, I try to hunt down every single paper that I can on German cockroach, and I practice what we call broad reading and critical thinking on each of these papers that I could find. So because of the mentorship of Dr. Wong, I always ask these 3 questions on every paper that I read. So first, what is the significance of the work? And I always try to find flaw with all these papers that I read. No matter whether it's written by a big name professors or just a small junior faculty, simplified without affecting the outcome of the work. If yes, how to do it? Now, this is probably the three questions that I will always ask whenever I receive a manuscript too. And it somehow affect me too, because along the way, I have other things that I saw, and I will still use this three principle in evaluating most of the work. And I always try to find flaws, which can be good and bad as well. Okay. Now, so one afternoon when I was in the lab working on my research, a professor walked into the lab, and she was visiting Dr. Yap at that time. She came because she is a World Health Organization consultant, WHO consultant, and Dr. Yap has a project with WHO at that time. And then she started asking me, what am I doing? And, so without knowing who she was, I mean, back then, that was pre-internet days. So we whatever that we read is all based on hard copy of the journal. Okay, so we don't have internet to search and look at the face of the scientist. Okay, so and she introduced herself as Janet Hemingway, and I was shocked. And the reason is because I read a lot of Janet Hemingway's work as part of my PhD research. She was the world authority on insecticide resistance. So Janet asked me, how do you like if you were to come to my lab and complete the remaining portion of your research? So at that point of time, to me, it was, of course, exciting. At the same time, I don't have any money, right, to go to UK for that purpose. But Janet told me, money is not your problem. Money is my problem. All I need from you is a yes. So of course, Janet told me she has consulted Dr. Yap, and Dr. Yap agreed. So then I never hear from her after she gone back for a while, and I was not sure. Back then there were no internet, so the fastest communication method was using fax machine. Okay. And then I did not hear from her maybe for 2 months or 3 months. And then the next thing I know is she sent me a check of £10,000 and told me, come now. Okay, so I took the check, I cashed it, and then I bought an air ticket. So within a month, I flew to Cardiff. Okay, so I arrived to Cardiff in early '95. I completed final two chapters of my PhD thesis in Janet's lab. And interestingly, at that time, I met another student from Purdue who was also visiting at the same time and working almost a similar project like me by the name of Mike Schaff. Now, this name will appear again later. I'll talk about that. So then I came back to Penang in July. I wrote my thesis and got it submitted. And I defended my thesis in May 1996. Because I already have 3 published papers, it was really easy. My defense was only 40 minutes. And interestingly, the chair of the defense panel was the deputy vice chancellor at that time. And he asked me, what my plan is. And I told him I'm going to the US for postdoc because I was offered a postdoc position. And he asked me, what if USM offered me a lecturer position? Would you stay? I say, no, I won't stay, because I already make up my mind. I want to go to US for postdoc. So about 2 months before I went to US for my postdoctoral position, I called up my host, okay, he's Dr. Kobe Shaw, and I told him about, USM is interested in hiring me as a lecturer. And he said, why don't you stay in USM? I said, because I want to do postdoc with you. He said, no, you should not come and do postdoc with me. You should stay because that is a permanent position. A faculty position is so hard to come by. You should instead stay in USM And you can always come and spend time in my lab later. So that was the advice of Dr. Kobe Shaw. So interestingly, my hosts do not want me to go to his lab, okay, or postdoc. So I decided that I want to take up the position in USM then. And I graduated with my PhD, and then I got into USM as a lecturer. This is my first lecturer payslip. Okay, I'm still holding it, you know, because the amount, it's less than 500 US, you know, when I first joined. And that was probably something that many people would not do it, because right now, I think for a young lecturer in USM or in Malaysia, they will be getting a salary approximately close to 2,000 US. Okay, so less than 500 US was actually a very small amount of money back then. So I started my career as a lecturer in '96, but there were a lot of issues during the beginning. I failed to secure research grant after many tries. So that was then I decided that I want to change my research direction from doing insect tops to urban entomology. Okay, so it was a move that I think it was correct at that time, because I was struggling getting research grant, and if I don't have any research going, I will not survive in academic environment. So I switched. Okay, and because that I switched, my first grant was from actually a company, not from any government or any institution. It was from S.C. Johnson and Son, and this is actually a household product company, and they have this insecticide division. And because they have seen my paper that was published in journals, so they asked me whether I could actually do some work for them. And then I received my first and my last research grant from Malaysia Ministry of Science that I serve as PI. Okay, and my research program was predominantly funded from industry grant from there on. So I only had one research grant from Malaysian government, and that was the only one in '97. So because of my field in urban pest management, it was probably the right thing. I have industry research grant. I have many good graduate students as well that came in and worked with me. And I was also lucky that I could work with trade association in the region, Pest Control Association of Malaysia, Singapore Pest Management Association, and also Thailand Pest Management Association. So at the age of 36, I became a full professor. And there were, of course, a number of awards that I received. All these awards were good because it basically reinforced my passion, okay, in science. And I'm going to talk about this in a short while, why award is important. So what do I think that I did right? First of all, I set my level playing field to global level from beginning. And I think it's very important for young faculty member. So do not try to be jago kampung, okay? I know it's a common thing when people are young, you know, they came in and they are ambitious, but they will try to look at their, you know, contemporaries or their peers and say that, oh, this guy published 5 papers, he could become associate prof. So I then set my target at 5 papers only. No, you should not. You should set your target or your level at the level that is internationally recognized, okay? Not at the level that your institution or your department recognize. So that's, I think it's important from beginning. You need to have the right niche, and I had the right niche and I stick to it. So having the right niche is important. Don't try to switch your niche, you know, according to time. And I think that's not good because you need to build a name in that niche. And then from there on, then you could actually move and people would recognize you for that. I was lucky because I meet the right people at the right time. I think that's very crucial. I had a lot of good students, I had good mentors and good collaborators. So one of those things that I did, which of course many university leadership would not agree with me, it's I do not file any IPs. I do not file any IPs because I want to stay neutral. The reason is because I work very closely with industry. So if I file any IPs and my IPs are being taken by a company, then the other company will no longer view me as neutral. So I have very supportive industry and friends. And of course, I have industry research fund that allowed me to explore many of these uncharted fields. So my research niche, it's very simple. It can be summarized in this one slide, essentially. I study the ecology, behavior, and physiological adaptation. So essentially, I'm interested to look at adaptation of urban insect pests, why and what that makes them very successful, whether it is morphology, biological trait, resistant, etc. And using those information, I want to develop, novel pest management strategies against these pests. At the same time, I'm also interested how these pests spread around the world. Okay, so what sort of characteristic that they have that allows them to be able to spread around the world and makes them successful. This is essentially what I have been doing over the last 25 to 28 years. Okay, and I do not deviate from all this. So basically, it's all within this three big bars. Okay. So of course, students are my greatest asset. So no professors would be successful without students. I can assure you, they are the main workforce. Professors come up with ideas, but good students are very important. These are some of my former PhD students who had really worked day and night in order to ensure, of course, they are working for their degree. At the same time, of course, because of them, I'm able to get to where I am. Because my training is in insect toxicology, and as you know, PhD trainings is very narrow. So because it's narrow, so it is important that we are able to work with other people so that we could answer more questions without the constraint of our training. So over the last 25 years, I was lucky that I met a few important mentors. Basically, they allowed me to go and spend time in their lab so that I could learn some basic principle of doing urban entomological research. And what I've done is I took research leave during the long semester break. So as you know, after the second semester ends, between the second semester and the beginning of the academic year, there is a break. And I usually would take that period and go somewhere and learn new techniques. So I went to Purdue to learn phylogenetics and population genetics method back in 97 and 2002. And then also University of Florida in 1999, okay, to learn termite research method. That helps a lot because my training was not in this field, okay. So this is one professor, Nanyao Su, who I learned my termite research from. And of course at Purdue, I have met Gary Bennett and Mike Scharf. And as I mentioned before, Mike Scharf was with me in Janet Hemingway's lab. And then subsequently, I went on a Fulbright scholarship to Purdue in 2002. And Mike is also an endowed chair professor at Purdue now. Okay, so it's a lifelong collaborator and friend. Now, to do good science, it is important that we could transcend across other research area and discipline. So as I mentioned before, none of us are supposed to know everything. So do not worry if you do not know everything. It is normal, okay? So because we do not know everything, we collaborate. That's the whole point. Okay, so over the last 20 years, I also met a number of good international and local colleagues that I could collaborate, and I got good outcomes. And these are some of them I'm showing in pictures. And of course, most importantly, you need the support of your family. Okay, my big boss, okay, so she sacrificed everything for my selfishness so that I could continue to stay as a passionate and a poor scientist. Okay, so now in 2014 summer, I went to an international conference, and at that time it was a dinner that I was at the dinner of that conference that I came to know that UCR is creating an endowed chair professor position. So that faculty member asked me, would I consider to move to the US for this position, okay? And of course, at that point of time, I wasn't even sure whether I would be able to get the position. But my area of training and ways of research seems to fit this position really well at that point of time. So what I was excited was UC Riverside was the birthplace of urban entomology, and also IPM. Professor Intan would be able to tell you, this is the place where IPM started back in 1959. And the concept of integrated pest management, which is widely used in pest management, actually started in this campus. So I decided to go for it. After that, I applied and I got shortlisted as a final 3 candidates. So they interviewed me for 3 days, and then I was officially offered the position in January 2018. The position was advertised in 2017. It took them 2 to 3 years before it was advertised. And it took me then about 1.5 years before I came here, because I need to finish up many loose ends in USM. Okay, so over here in UCR, we have a relatively nice urban entomology program, not too large, but we have 3 faculty members that are doing urban entomology. Dr. Mike Russ, it's still in UCR. And of course, we have a good number of students that are pursuing masters and PhD here. So in summary, for this first section, I would say that to be smooth sailing in an academic career, it is not just one person's effort. Throughout my 30 years in USM as a student, first as a student and then as a faculty member, I think I was blessed because I met many right mentors. I had good students. I also have met many good collaborators, generous funders, of course, supportive friends and wife. Now, one thing that I think it is important for everyone to note is I feel inferior from day one. And the reason is because I was not trained overseas. Okay, so because I received both my degree from USM and then I work in USM. So that basically leaves this sense of inferiority in me. But you can treat it as inferior at one side. And if you are unhappy about it all the time, then it's going to create negativity in me. But I took it the other way around because I feel inferior, so I have to work 3 times harder than normal people. And because of that, it actually pushed me to go even further. So, and also I think coming from the right lineage, especially in academic training, academic field always talk about lineage. So because I work with Dr. Yap, who is world-renowned in mosquito research, and Janet Hemingway, it actually helped me to secure many opportunities when I was starting my career. So I think that portion is important too. So let us talk about establishing linkages, research collaboration, networking. Okay. So first of all, I want to give a little advice to faculty members, especially young faculty members. So if you have talent, you need to have efforts. Now, these efforts, when you mix with your talents, it will create skills. Now, if you take these skills and you put more efforts in, it will lead to achievement. Okay? But if you are passionate about your work, and you have the skills plus encouragement and perseverance. So perseverance, I call it as sustained effort. So you continue to do the same thing over and over. You persevere with passion, with skills, and with some encouragement, it will equivalent to success. And this is important. I know it's common sense, but I still have to tell you this, okay? So the very first thing I think you have to ask yourself is, when you wake up in the morning, do you feel like coming to work or not? Even the weekends. If you look forward to come to work every morning and even the weekend, you're on the right track in academics, okay? If you wake up in the morning and feel, oh, you know, I feel tired, maybe I should take off one day, you know, I should go somewhere else, you are not on the right track, okay? Now, despite being in academia for 30 over years, I actually look forward to come to work every day. And if I can, over the weekends too, but, you know, I don't think my wife would be happy about that, okay? So, first of all, I think for any faculty member, young or intermediate, you should have what I call short-term, intermediate, and long-term targets. So short-term targets would be kind of like annual targets. Intermediate would be 5-year, and then the long-term one would be 10 years, okay? Now, very important, you must have quick wins. These quick wins, so-called, are recognition, because it will serve as encouragement to feed and sustain your passion. Now, you cannot work for 10 years without any encouragement, okay? Because no matter how passionate you are, you will always sustain failure. And if you have failures, one way or another, it's going to remove part and part of your passion. So that recognition is crucial. Now, how do you get recognition? So recognition or quick wins can be in the form of awards. It can be in the form of publication. Now, over here in UC Riverside, what I discovered when I arrived here is the people in the department are very collegial to one another. So every one of us treat each other with respect and would like to see each of us successful. And every year, we even have a committee that we call award committee. Every year, this award committee would be looking around to see what awards that they can push their colleagues to win. And they know that by winning some of these awards, this will give big encouragement to the faculty member, okay? So that it can continue to sustain that passion. So yeah, if your institution do not have that, maybe it's good to look around. And that quick wins can also be, for example, oh, this guy has a very interesting piece of research in this area. Maybe this year for our annual meeting of, for example, for that field, we should invite this person to give a plenary talk, for example. And that could be a big encouragement to that person. So it means that his work is being recognized. Okay. Now, if you have not read these 2 books, I encourage you to read it. Okay, go and find it. You know, you can purchase the book. If it's expensive, find ways in the internet to get the book in PDF. Okay, if you have a problem, contact me by email later. Okay, so these two books are really beneficial, especially for young faculty members. So Grit is a book that talks about passion and perseverance and why certain people have that characteristic to be successful and why others do not have it. Okay. The other one is Ikigai. Okay, Ikigai is very interesting because if you wake up in the morning, as I mentioned before, and you look forward to come to work, basically you have found your Ikigai. If you don't have that Ikigai to come to work, you are not in the right field. You should quit as an academic. Okay, so why do we talk about linkages and collaboration? First of all, it's because of our limitation in research training. Okay. Second, we want to have research and academic exchanges. We can also inculcate long-term friendship and academic discourse. We also want positive peer-reviewed comments. And if you have extensive networking, the likelihood of your peer-reviewed paper get accepted when your friend is reviewing it is higher. That's for sure. Okay. And of course, cross-institution collaboration. So how do you approach it? It can be individual. It can be individual followed by institution. It can also be an institution method. So institution approach would be more formal and usually top-down approach. But ultimately, to make it work, formality is probably the least important. It is the collaboration that actually makes it work. So that's why individual effort is crucial. So let us talk about individual effort. First of all, as I mentioned before, are you hungry enough for research? So I'm not sure whether Itibe has this program of sabbatical leave. If you have sabbatical program or even short research leave that young faculty member can take, okay? You can actually have young faculty member going to another labs, spend time there to learn some techniques, okay? Now, learning techniques is one thing, but it is also helpful to establish network. There are actually many different international fellowship programs that you can consider, okay? For example, Fulbright from the US, GSPS. Then there's Alexander von Hamburg Award from Germany, and also the Endeavour Scholarship in Australia. So it is difficult normally to get a host if he or she do not know you earlier. So that's why it is important to start early. Okay, so let's say 5 years down the road or 3 years down the road, you are going to do your sabbatical leave. You should start now. Okay, have the contact. When someone knows you, they will be more willing to host you. Okay, and choose wisely. Okay, if you choose a very well-known host, a Nobel Prize winner, for example, so it does not mean that he or she will be a good name, be a good collaborator, unless you just want to write on his name, oh, I have worked with this so and so before, or you publish a paper together with this person. Okay, but choose wisely. Okay. Now, academic discourse is important. So these days, because of the advancement of social media, there are a lot of groups that you could join, forums. Okay, so when you join these groups of forum, there are many things that you could discuss. Okay, especially, for example, if you have some issues with some research question, you can always shoot a question into the social media group, and some other people will then respond and give you ideas. So it's so easy these days compared with, let's say, when I was doing my PhD, I practically have to write letters, mail the letters out, and wait for the letters to come back. That would take like 2 months. Okay, but these days, help is just, what do you call that? A post ahead. Okay, so you can discuss, you can request for materials, etc. Now, every young faculty member, okay, and of course, not just young, intermediate as well as senior, you should have your Google Scholar set up. So if you do not have a Google Scholar today, you should go to scholar.google.com and set up your Google Scholar. Why? Because anytime when someone wants to find out about a particular researcher, they will first go to Google Scholar and check what are the publications that this guy has done. That is kind of like a background check. okay, for every one of us. Now, do not worry too much. If you do not have a lot of things to show, that's fine. You have to start from somewhere. The other one is ResearchGate. ResearchGate is becoming increasingly common, okay, that many people are using besides using Google Scholar. I know some of you would go with Scopus, would go with Web of Science. That's fine also. But mind you, many of the institutions in the West do not use Scopus or Web of Science to check a profile of a researcher. Normally, they use Google Scholar or ResearchGate because it's free. Okay, so please set this up. Now, you can also have your collaborators serve as co-supervisor for your graduate student. I serve as co-supervisor for one of Prof. Intan's PhD student many years ago. Okay, and also that student then also came to my lab to learn some techniques. Okay, so this is also one way that you could do collaboration, or you could find a good collaborator. You can also appoint a person, a professor, as an external examiner if within your system requires external examiner. Many of the British system, the thesis, masters or PhD would require external examiner to examine the thesis and grade the thesis before the thesis is approved. Conference organization is also one way that you could get to know academic in your field and make yourself known as a player in the field. Now, it is very intimidating sometimes when you are young and you want to actually get to know people in your field because you are not sure of yourself or you don't have confidence of yourself. So one of the ways to do it would be to organize a good international conference. But of course, you need to do a good job. Okay, otherwise you will be remembered forever as a poor conference organizer. Okay, so organizing conference is a very quick way to make yourself known as a player in the field. Okay, now when it comes to linkages with industry, okay, it very much depends on your field of research. So first of all, you must have proven track record in research. You must have good reputation in the field. Because a lot of companies, when they want to work with you, they would first look what you have done in the past. If you do not have good track record, the likelihood of companies actually coming over and work with you is actually very low. Okay, so that's why you must have peer review papers to back you, okay? And the nice thing working with industry is they will also provide you some grants to work on. And that grants actually, it's very useful because you can use that for your research and also to pay your students, in a form of scholarship, for example. So one of the very common questions that many people would ask me is MOU or MOA required for linkages and collaboration? The answer is no. Okay, so MOU or MOA, it's actually very much a formality. Okay. In fact, it is not even essential for any collaboration effort. Most US universities generally do not buy the idea of MOU or MA unless for legal reason. Okay, so for example, you are pursuing a research together in something that could eventually result in an IP, for example, intellectual property. Then they may want to sign something, okay, an MOA, for example. But generally, most Asian university, Japanese, ASEAN university, they want things to be more formalized. And that's how MOU and MOA come in. But signing that piece of paper is one thing. So all parties must play active role. Otherwise, it just would be just another piece of paper. Okay, so if you have signed something with the other party, so you should take that proactive role. Okay, because ultimately, the output is more important. Okay, in an MOU or MOA, you want to see the outputs. Okay, now MOU, MOA, it's very much a legal binding document, especially MOA, when it comes to intellectual property. Okay, because it was spelled out very clearly in the event that an intellectual property comes out, what is going to happen? Okay, so make sure all these MOA documents have gone through the detailed scrutinization of the institution lawyers, because both sides will have to go through it very carefully. Okay, otherwise you could be disadvantaged in the end. Okay. Now, measurable outputs, peer review papers is very common, conference paper, books. It can also be exchange of students and staff. So someone come over, the other person or some other students go over the other side. So exchange of students and staff is common. Exchange of research material is common. Both parties can also join, apply for research grant, can join supervision of a graduate student, join IP, and even take up advisory appointment. Okay, for example, I have served on advisory appointment with Kyoto University. Okay, so you can be sitting in the board and advising a certain things. Okay, so I'm going to give you some of my personal experience. So please bear in mind that it may not apply to everyone, but whichever that applies, you can then take it and use it for yourself. Okay, so I have many institutions that I have linkages with along the way, and usually they are in the form of publication. So I work with Cambridge, I work with Purdue, Chulalongkorn, CSIRO, and all these different universities. Okay, so most of all, I think it's important that you have an output, because if you want that collaboration to continue, people are expecting output. Because of my field of research, I'm able to work with Pest Management Association. So I'm working with pests. Of course, if you are in another area, for example, in engineering, you may have also your trade association that you can get involved in. So because of the involvement with industry, so I was lucky because I get funded from different sources from industry. And it is crucial because I stay neutral. And if you stay neutral, everyone will be willing to work with you. Now, industry linkages probably provide more than 95% of all the research grant I received so far. This can be in the form of research project, can be in the form of testing work, consultancy. It can also be in the form of gift. So gift would be something like, okay, if you need a machine, for example, for your lab, the company would then donate a machine. Okay, so, but most of all, don't be calculative. So sometimes it is good to invest your time by giving away some of this in exchange for more in future. So this is what we call investment. So sometimes they will call up, ask for some advice, and you should actually feel free and give that advice. Okay, so it takes time, of course, to develop and requires patience and also research excellence. Now, working with industry, I think personal integrity is very important, because the companies that support your research, they are also competitors to one another. Okay, so if you want to be respected by everyone, you have to treat everyone equally. So joint collaborative research is nice, especially, you know, when you can do sampling in the field. Okay, so these are in Kagoshima, we are sampling termites. We are sampling ants over here in Taiwan, and this is actually one of the expedition in Keningau in Borneo with my collaborator, Dr. Yoshimura from Kyoto University. So to do good science, it is important that we are able to transcend across, okay, to other research area. So this is crucial because none of us are supposed to know everything, and that's why we collaborate. So these are some of the collaboration and peer review papers. So another thing is you can also write books together, okay? So books are a good project that you can take it is nice because especially for textbook, it will last longer. Okay, and so this is one of the book that will come out this year, and it's a textbook. So for personal, you can also take up visiting professorship in different institution, and that will help you as well. And also MOU with top university. So as you can see here, this is one of the old photo between Professor Abu Hassan, formerly my dean in USM, and also Intan, okay, Pak Intan. So national conference, as I mentioned before, is important. So do a good job and you will be remembered. Now, besides organizing a conference, it is also important for you to go and attend international conference in different parts of the world. And if you find that organizing an international conference is too much of time or too much of work, what you can organize what we call symposium in a big international conference. So symposium are very nice because symposium are usually smaller. You are in control of who the speakers are in the symposium. And then, of course, there will be many people that will come and attend the symposium. And you can discuss a very specific topic that is of your interest. And usually, the idea flow really well after the formal session. And this is when you can start talking and start establishing research contact and also collaboration. Always remember to make time for research and for rest and recreation, okay? Because it helps to strengthen the relationship. Remember, relationship is important. We are all human beings after all, okay? So it is important to have that relationship established between your research peers. Also make time for your lab members because they are your workforce, okay? So individual labs, the professor should not treat the student as laborer, but as research partner, okay? So because you have to work with them and then they will be able to help you, okay, to move to the next stage. You need colleagues, you need good relationship with the colleagues. They can provide you a lot of information that you need, especially the senior colleagues. At the same time, they could watch your back, okay, in case you are in trouble. Okay. So this is a simple guide to start off linkages, okay? Start small. It may take a few years before you can see something tangible, I think. And contact your former supervisor if you have been trained overseas. Contact your former supervisor, your graduate student, graduate school peers, maybe your lab mate, someone who's seated next to you in the same office that can serve as your external examiner for your student. You can take up sabbatical in another institution, preferably a foreign one, and even a company. You can also do your sabbatical in a company, carry out research of mutual interest, and of course, publish work together. Now, this is for institution, okay? So for institution leadership, so I think it's important to understand your institution's strength and weaknesses. So a lot of time, I think a lot of institutions that I am known try to do too many things, try to cover too wide because they want everyone to excel. But because our resources are limited, a lot of time it is not possible to cover every ground, okay? So it is important to understand your strength. And you concentrate on niche research area. Some of these niche research area may be research that can only be done, for example, in Indonesia alone. and nowhere else in the world. And those are important area, and you should allocate the right resources to that particular niche area. Now, another one, of course, it's to allow and support, financially if possible, faculty members and students to spend time in foreign labs, but with tangible outputs, of course. I know in Thailand, the Thai National Research Council, they allocate funding for Thai students who are pursuing PhD in a Thai university to spend time in the foreign labs. And that basically opened up, opportunities besides the worldview of these researchers and faculty members. You can conduct workshop for graduate student and new faculty members. You can establish special unit or office dedicated for research collaboration and also internationalization. And I think this is important. I know in USM, we have a unit set up like this for that purpose. It is probably also good to establish visiting professorship and postdoc program for foreign scholars, because an institution can only rise on international standing when it is known outside its own country. So visiting professorship is something that many institutions, I know for the fact that Japanese universities start moving up very quickly because they start having all these programs for visiting professor, for faculty members from overseas to visit. They even have a special unit being set up for this purpose. So your international standing would gradually then go up. Okay. And of course, identify talented students and faculty members in your department and of course, nurture them. So talent, it's not just recruiting the talent, but at the same time also retaining the talents, because you do not want the talents to leave your institution. So recruiting talents, it's very, very crucial. So an institution strive because of its excellence, not because of its past glory, not because it is the oldest, and not because it has nice building. Okay, so recruitment of talents, it's a serious matter and it has to be carried out properly. So I know for the fact that, many top institutions do not recruit anyone unless that person has postdoctoral experience. Some institutions will not recruit anyone unless that person already had a PhD. Okay, so why is that so? Is because they want to see that proven track record, publication track record, or in the right field based on your institution plan. And by doing so, you actually bring in someone who can start working from day one, okay, and not having to nurture that person, allow a few years before that person could excel. I'm not sure with Ikigai, but in Malaysia, we don't have tenure system, okay? And tenure, it's something I think it's important in the academic world. So when you recruit someone in, that tenure should only be given when the person has demonstrated research excellence, and normally between 5 to 7 years. So if that person has proven that he or she is excellent, then you provide him with or her with an associate professor. So that is, of course, required some form of tweak of your system, I guess, if you do not have a tenure system right now. Now, one of those things that I want to raise, it is sensitive. I know many people are talking about it, but I think it is the right platform for me to talk about it. It's predatory journal. So choose your journal wisely, especially young faculty, and publish your paper only in reputable journal. Now, you may have read about reports recently, okay, over the last probably few weeks, talking about some countries with the highest predatory journals article. Now, predatory journals is no longer just an open access journal. Many predatory journals are listed in Scopus. Okay, they are actually listed in Scopus, and they are predatory. So if you, as an institution, were to just look at the Scopus list and say you can publish any papers in Scopus, I think that is not correct. Because you can send anything to some of these journals in Scopus, and it will still get published no matter what. You can send it today, then the next day, you will have your galley proof done. And this is very alarming and serious, because I have read papers that were published in Predatory Journal that is listed in Scopus that has, you know, grammatical error, typos, even problems with the science of the paper, but yet it get published. Okay, so if you're not sure, you can always ask an expert in the field. But normally, if you publish any journals that is societal based, meaning you have an academic society, normally you don't go wrong. Okay, now predatory journals, you need to pay for it, and you pay a lot of money too. Okay, so one way, of course, is to check the BELS list for the list of predatory journal publisher, but this is not a complete proof list. Okay, so the best is when you want to publish a paper in a journal, always ask your more senior colleague or someone else who is already established in the field whether that journal is predatory or not. So pitfalls in linkage, I only have the last few slides. It takes two to tango. So when one party neglects his or her role in collaboration, you have a broken linkage. Okay. When one party do not respect the mutual agreement, for example, they publish the joint collaborative work without the consent of the other party, then you have a broken linkages. Intellectual property dispute could happen, or interests subside with either one of the parties, and then they are not interested anymore. This is the problem. Okay, so it takes two to tango, as I mentioned. So take-home messages. Research excellence is essential ingredient to start off any linkages or collaboration. Output is needed to make the linkages, collaboration, networking sustainable. MOU is important for record, but ultimately the human factor is the one that makes it works. Okay, otherwise it's just another piece of signed paper. Okay, now last but not least, okay, I want to give you a scenario. Young faculty member. At a conference in a hotel, you met a professor that you admired most, okay, in an elevator. Both of you are going up to your respective floor. So you are going to the 10th floor, the professor is going to the 11th floor. So you only have very short amount of time now. How do you introduce yourself and your research so that the professor can still remember you and your work in 6 to 12 months? Now, a lot of time, we are not trained to introduce ourselves within 20 seconds, for example, or 30 seconds, okay? This is what I call the elevator pitch. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the elevator pitch, you can always go to YouTube and learn about this, okay? So the whole purpose of any researcher is to be able to introduce yourself as a researcher, your research project, the significance of your project, so that the audience want to learn more about your research. Okay, so I'm giving you some information here, who you are, what is your research, where you do your research, when did you do it, and why is your research significant. So a lot of time, we often forget to explain the benefit of the work. Okay, so elevator pitch is something that everyone should have. And you would be able, if you would be able to do an elevator pitch in 30 seconds, talks about the significance of your work, then you can rest assured that person that you talk to will still remember you in 6 to 12 months. Okay, longer than that, I'm not sure, but you need to make a lasting impression. Okay, and elevator pitch is the way to go. So I just want you to introduce this concept to you. You can always go to YouTube and learn more about the elevator pitch. So with that, I would like to end my talk. I'm sorry I take longer than necessary. Okay, and I welcome question from the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Lee. I think this is very nice talk and inspiring especially for young staff here at ITB. And there are already several questions in chat room. So I because you are give very interesting talk, I think. So first from Pak Dasapta Erwin. Good morning, Professor. Please excuse my immediate question. It was the first thing that came to my mind during my running session this morning, since you probably have some experience in attending Southeast Asian University. What would be your suggestion for us to move beyond mainstream metric to boost our networking?
Okay. So I think many of the faculty members in Indonesia are being trained in different parts of the world. Okay, so when it comes to the networking, okay, it has to be a concerted effort. Of course, at individual level, at the same time also at institution level. So it cannot just be individual level, but institution level is not moving forward. So it has to be two-pronged. So as a start, as I mentioned before in my talk, there are different level that you could establish. You know, for example, first of all, get everyone to be on Google Scholar as an institution. So every single one of them should have an account in Google Scholar. And second, you should have an account in ResearchGates. I think that's the most fundamental thing that any faculty member must have. Why? Because these days, everything is through the internet, okay? So if I want to collaborate with someone, for example, someone from Ikigai contacted me, the first thing I would do is, I would take the name and then I would input into Google Scholar and see what this person has done in the past. Because I want to know whether my area of interest and that person would fit to one another. Yeah, I think that's probably the first thing to do. Then you need to establish concerted effort, maybe between different departments. You may have, because different departments will have different ways of establishing such network. Some departments would try to establish network, for example, through trade association. Some departments would try to establish network, for example, through former university that some of these faculty members have done. That's fine, okay, because different departments will have different ways of doing it. But ultimately, every year you must assess the success of all this network, you know. Now, so I stop here. Maybe I will come back again later with other questions, because there is a series of questions that I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lee. So the second question from Pak Sony Yuliar. Good morning, Professor Lee. I'd like to ask you two questions related to innovation system in developing nations. First, the connection between scientific productivity in universities and industrialization level of an economy or a society. How do you see this matter?
Okay, so
yeah, maybe you can answer first.
Scientific productivity, it's interesting topic. I went through the time when I first started, when research is not important, up to the point when I leave, that research became very important in USA. Okay, so the most common thing, I think, of any institution would be to look at numbers. Okay, and so we are all into the number games. So we talk about, oh, how many papers you published this year? And I would say, okay, if you are a professor, you need to publish 4 papers. If you are a junior faculty, you need to publish 2 papers. But numbers is not the solution. I think different field will have different difficulty. For example, I have some engineering colleagues who could publish 30, 40 papers a year. But as a biologist, to publish 4 papers a year is tough. So does it mean that my engineering colleagues are much better than me? No. I do have friends in social science that could produce maybe 1 paper every 2 years. So is my friend in social science not as good as us in sciences? No. So I think in terms of productivity, it has to depends on the field itself. Now, so numbers, it's not the solution. Of course, for us human, and of course, administrator will always look at numbers because numbers is the easiest to measure. You can also look at impact factor of the journal, but impact factor is also not the solution because if you work with in medical field, for example, the journals in medical field has higher impact factor. Compare with, let's say, if you work in pure maths, you're a mathematician, you publish pure mathematics in pure mathematics journal. Impact factor is usually less than 1. But in medical field, your impact factor can be 15, 20, 25, 30. So that it's case to case, as I say. Connection between productivity and industrialization level, yes, it is true because with the more advanced country, more amount of money are being invested into R&D, you would find that the productivity is going up. That's for sure.
Okay,
So,
I think there is still a second question from Pak
yes.
Sony. How do you see the brain drain phenomena in developing countries that result from international networking?
Yeah, I'm an example of brain drain, right, for Malaysia. So I think brain drain, it can happen when you have bright people in an institution, and after a period of time they don't feel satisfied anymore. That could happen. But if the environment is conducive, I do not think brain drain could happen easily. Brain drain, of course, will happen no matter what. But there are other considerations why brain drain can happen. And one of those considerations is when a certain talented person do not get the respective recognition. So then brain drain could happen because somewhere else could recognize that person better. So, and then that person leaves. That is common when it comes to brain drain. So, as I said, if you nurture the right talent and you are able to also provide conducive environment to retain that talent, more often than not, you will not find brain drain. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Lee. So I'm going to
international network. Sorry,
sorry.
International networking
Yes,
is not
yes.
the reason for brain drain. Remember that, because brain drain can happen even without international networking. A person can be working in an institution without having any contact with outside, but because that person is upset with the system, that person may just quit and move out somewhere else. So it's nothing to do with international networking at all. In fact, I think the benefit of international networking is more than the negative side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Lee. So the next question, I think it's quite technical questions. What is, from Bu Nur Hayati, what is important factor for honey production of bee in natural?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm in the business, just like Pak Intai, I'm in the business of killing insects.
Okay.
But I think there are
Quite
of course many factors when it comes to production. I think you know, the conducive environment, whether it's clean, free of contamination from pesticide, you know, are among the factor, and of course disease as well. Yeah. But I can't really say. I think some of my colleagues here would probably be able to address this better.
Okay, I think Bu Nurhayati can find more appropriate professor there. The next question from Bu Gabriela Alodia. Thanks, hello Professor Lee, thanks for the talk. I'm quite curious, when you say that you need to stay neutral to the industries, what do you actually mean?
Okay. So when you start working with different companies, okay, now let's assume you have worked with 3 companies, A, B, C. Now company A would want you to do research for them. You carry out research, company B too, and company C. A lot of time, company A may approach you and ask you about company B and C, their competitor, okay? If you have integrity, you will not talk about company B and C at all. Because if you start talking about company B and C, company A will also stop working with you. Because if you can talk about company B and C, when company B asks about company A, you will also review the same thing. That's when you are not, and you know, you lost your integrity. So always stay neutral, no matter what. When it comes to working with company, always stay neutral. So of course, along the way, I worked with different companies. Companies came out with different products. I always make a point when I publish or when I present a paper, I do not present about the trade name of the product. I only talk about the generic name. Okay, it could be a chemical, generic compound of the chemical name instead of a product name. That's one way. I also try to stay neutral because I don't file any IPs, which is good and bad. If you file an IP, you have a patent. This patent, if it's taken by company A, then company B and C would think that I would want to push this particular product for company A because I have vested interest now. When the products sell, I get royalty. So I'm no longer neutral. And that's why I don't file any patent. I don't file any IP. And I remain neutral and remain poor as a scientist.
Very interesting, Professor Lee. Okay, so next question, is it possible? So from Pak Panji, Professor Lee, thank you for your insight. I cannot help asking you about your first and last grant from the government, but maybe I missed some details. Why do you prefer grants from the industries over the governments? I thought grant from the government should be giving us more independence for us researchers.
Good question. All I can say is I was disillusioned with the way the funding was given out to researcher during the first 5 years of my career. Because you can have excellent research proposal, but you don't get funded. Instead, a lousy research proposal may get funded. And there are, of course, biasness, politics, and all these things involved, which I'm not going to elaborate it here. But there were a lot of problems in the early days. So, and because I have, you know, a good funding source, I do not need to rely anymore on those funds. So that's why I survive using industry funds. And in a way, it's good because I'm independent to do whatever I want, and and I have no one has a control over how I use the money. For example, if I have a grant coming in, I need to buy an equipment, I can buy an equipment. I'm not being restricted by any of these conditions, especially with the grant from government. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question. Good morning, Professor Lee. From Bu Lucia, to what degree did the external factors such as the education environment setting and government policy with regards to education and research in the academia during the time you resided there play a role in your achievement in the academic world and perhaps influence your decision to move to US?
This is a tough question. Okay, so I think you hit the nail very close to what happened. You kind of be able to read. So I think, yeah, I think the education policy, the environmental, the climate for research does play a very important role. I excel very well because I was funded a lot from industry, and because I was funded a lot from industry, I was able to do whatever that I want, that I see that I could pursue in that independent manner that make me excel. But if I were to be limited or restricted with the funds from government, I may not be as successful as what I am. I personally believe. So there are of course issue with politics that was actually quite a factor too at that point of time. But when I was considering moving somewhere else, politics was an issue at that time. There were corruption, big time corruption, and all these things that happening with leadership in the country at that time. And I was upset with that, obviously. But then, you know, the other side, it's the birthplace of urban entomology, birthplace of IPM that really attract me a lot, because I want to work in an institution with that lineage. As I mentioned before to you, lineage is very important to me, academic lineage. So I could produce students of that lineage as well. So then, of course, when I got the position, without thinking much, you know, I took up the position. There are, of course, issues that influence my decision. I have to admit that. Yeah.
Okay. So still from Bu Lucia, in addition to individual characteristics you elaborated, how far does the organizational climate relate to future career success and development for us who work in the academia? Based on your experience, what areas do higher education in Southeast Asia still lack, and what areas do they already excel in terms of organizational climate?
Okay, so first of all, we are at disadvantage in many sense. I think money is one major issue. So when you do not have a lot of money, you have a lot of limitation when it comes to doing high-powered science, for example. But that does not imply that you cannot be excellent in the area that you do research in. For example, Indonesia, Malaysia, we have very big wealth of biodiversity, for example. Biodiversity could be in the form of plant, could be in the form of animal, could be in the form of insects, for example. This is something that we are blessed with. And we should put our niche, because this is our niche area. So we can excel really well if we go in the right field. as I mentioned towards the last of my slides, institution must recognize what are their strengths and weaknesses. So if your weaknesses is money, for example, you cannot buy big equipments, it does not mean that you cannot do that type of research too, because you can always collaborate with someone else, because you are not supposed to have everything. Remember I mentioned before? So if you have limitation in one aspect, but you have advantage in the other aspect, use your advantage to leverage your limitation, overcome your limitation. Now, I know it sounds abstract, but if you are individual researcher in your field, you will understand what I'm trying to say. If your limitation is English, for example, okay? Now, I was not able to speak good English when I was a student. I was not able to write good English when I was a student too. I'm still not writing good English now, but I try, okay? So if you come out with your research paper, for example, but you could not write really well, so what you could do as an institution is you hire professional editor. So you can have an office within Ikigai where faculty member could actually send manuscript to this person to work on the English. If you do not want to have an in-house person, you can always hire someone from outside, but you pay a small fee. That person, that professional editor could actually do editing for that on that manuscript. And the chance of that person or that particular faculty member's manuscript getting accepted would be higher. So I have to admit, English, when it comes to writing, it's one of the weaknesses in many of these. Money, of course, it's, when you don't invest into facilities, that become an issue too. But it is the university leadership and the individual researcher to find out what your weaknesses is, and then use your strength to overcome those weaknesses. And that may be collaboration. I give you an example. Okay, I give you an example. For example, Pak Intan has a student who wants to work with insecticide resistance at molecular level. Okay, and let's say the student, it really worked very hard, collected a lot of cockroaches, but could not do molecular study because of the lack of facilities. So Pak Intan can contact me. And I told Pak Intan, send the student over to Riverside. The student come over here, spend 3 months, complete that portion, go back, and then the work is done, write up, we publish together. That is win-win. Okay, why? Because I don't have access to the German cockroach in Indonesia. Pak Intan has it, student has it, right? But the student do not have access to the type of skill or the facilities that I have here over here. So that is one way that you could work on that. Yeah. We are still lacking a lot of issue. Facilities is one thing, but there are also inherent problem. Because many of the Southeast Asian university, we are still trying to train workforce. So we don't have a luxury to spend money and pursue high-powered science. That is one thing for sure right now. But we have to start from somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lee. The next question from Pak Denny. In terms of your perseverance in pursuing opportunities overseas, how often did you apply for pursuing studies overseas, given that you decided to be a local graduate? Back then, how often did you apply actively for university position overseas? Are you now in a comfort zone, or are you still seeking for another top university position, Professor Lee?
Okay. So first question. When I was a graduate student, I applied to, I think, three universities. I got admitted for all three, but one offered me graduate assistantship. Okay, the other two did not offer me graduate assistantship at that time. So, but the graduate assistantship was not sufficient to cover my living expenses and tuition, and that's why I decided to stay back, in USM to complete my PhD. Now, how often do I apply for university position overseas? As a matter of fact, that was my first application for this endowed chair position. So throughout that 23 years when I was a lecturer in USM, I have never applied even once until I applied for this position. This was my first one. So are you in comfort zone now? No, I'm not in comfort zone. I still need to work very hard. Are you actively seeking for another? No, I'm not, because I kind of realized that coming from another institution here, I had to start all over again. It is very unlikely I want to start all over again. Okay? Yeah, there's only so much energy that I have. Okay.
Okay, Professor Lee, next question from Pak Hari Devianto. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. I just have one question. What do you think the role of sabbatical leave in maintaining research excellence?
Sabbatical leave is very important in maintaining research excellence. When I was in USM, every 5 years we are given 9 months of sabbatical leave. Okay, 5 years, 9 months. So I know if you work for 3 years, you get 5 months. You work for 5 years, you get 9 months. So I normally don't go 9 months. I would go for just 5 months. The reason is because I have a lab to maintain, so I cannot go too long, and that will affect the people in my lab too.
Yeah.
So going for 5 months is important because you can then learn new techniques. You can then learn new skills. You can also publish together with other researchers. And that is important. Okay, that is important because the field change very quickly. You do not want to stay put in one place. You want to be able to also pick up some new techniques somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, next question from Bu Enda, one of our dean. Professor Lee, what is the minimum qualification for lecturer or staff permanent staff recruitment in the Malaysia top university? Is it PhD or what?
Yeah, right now it's PhD. So if you don't have a PhD, you won't get it. You won't get in. We have not had the requirement that they need postdoc yet, but PhD is the minimum. Yeah.
Okay. From next question from Chris Dayon Kim. I think this is from outside. Okay. Thanks for your valuable talk. Could you share your experience to increase students' interest in entomology? How did you attract them?
Well, it is not easy to increase student interest in entomology. I think many students these days will want to do more high-powered science, like biotechnology, molecular biology. But if you could actually give a talk, if I have an opportunity to give a talk to young student, okay, maybe first-year student, you must be able to relate yourself in their position. Why entomology is the choice and not molecular biology or biotech. One of the very first thing that I always tell them is entomology would be able to give you jobs, something that you will not find in other fields so easily, especially in other field of biological science. And it's true. Entomology graduates of USM normally would be able to get jobs at a faster rate compared with other graduates. And of course, you need to show them the statistics. So you need to be well prepared too, you know. So job market, it's favorable. That's one. And second, it's if you are passionate about entomology, and when you talk, you can actually rub on the student very easily. Yeah. So if you are not passionate, no matter how well you say it, the student is not going to get excited about it. So I think, yeah, that's one thing that is important. Yeah, passion.
Okay, I think this is the last question from Bu Nur Laila Arif. Dear Professor Lee, you said that it is essential to transcend across to other research. Also in previous mention, we should have our niche. Which one is the most important?
Now, niche is your area. So when I say transcend across other research, it's still within your niche. Okay, it's still within your niche. I give you an example. For example, I'm trained in insect toxicology. Okay, I don't have any background in population genetics. I'm still working with cockroaches. That is my niche. I work with cockroach insecticide resistant. That is my niche. But now I want to study cockroach population genetics, which is something that I don't have the skill on. So I collaborate. I'm still within my niche. Okay, I just need someone with another expertise to study my cockroaches. So I'm not changing my niche. I still remain in the same niche. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, this is still one more.
Okay.
From
No
Muhammad Yudhistira Aziz. Thank you for your inspiring talk, Professor Lee. Based on your experience, how long did you build your research roadmap established in your institution?
So I suppose that you are talking about when I was in USM, right?
Yeah.
So this is a tough question. I do not know. I do not know what is how long that I used to build the roadmap, but I think from the beginning until the point that I became established, when I have constantly students looking for me to do research. I constantly have different multinational company looking for me to carry out research. It took about 10 years. Took about 10 years from the day I joined. Yeah. So the first 4 years was very tough. First 4 years was very tough because I'm not known. No one knows me. And I hardly have much money to pursue research interests. And also I don't have many good students, okay, during the beginning. So a lot of things I have to do it on my own. At the same time, I also need to, write. But when you are young, that's okay. You can do it. You have lots of energy. But as you age, then that could be a problem. Yeah, but yeah, being young, it's awesome.
Okay.
I can relate to you, Professor Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think all questions already answered by Professor Lee, and I think the time is also almost finished. Maybe is there anyone to give something? Professor Intan, maybe?
Yeah, thank you. Chow-Yang, actually, I really enjoy your talk. This is very inspiring. I have one question. When you joined the USM, as well as when you joined the UC Riverside, did you join a research group or belong a member of research group or research center?
No, when I was recruited to USM, so basically they recruit me as a lecturer in entomology. Okay, when I was recruited in USM in '96, because at that time Dr. Yap retires, so the position in entomology, there was a vacant position in entomology, and then they recruited me in. Okay, so UC Riverside is different because UC Riverside created an endowed chair professor position, and they still have other urban entomologists within the department. So I'm here to fill up that endowed chair professor position. And when I come in, I work together with the other two faculty members. And that basically make the program stronger, I guess. Yeah, because now we have 3 brains instead of 2. Yeah, and with my contacts in Asia, I could bring in then inputs, whether it's industry grants or or ideas from Asia. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the time is almost over, so I can close from me. We learn many things, Professor Lee, from the big things from you, like how making collaboration, until the very detailed things. Yeah, you still keep your first salary receipt. It surprised me. I'm not sure how many still keep our first salary receipt. Yeah. And I believe your speak very inspire and motivate us very much, and how we hope that we can learn, and I think also some of us can make collaboration with you, especially maybe Professor Intan and others professor. Okay, let me take back to Pak Rino, please.
Thank you, Prof. Brian. It's a very inspiring talk from Professor Lee. And I believe we all learn from you and try to implement in our academic career. And I just want to mention, don't forget to fill in the attendance. So because we will send the e-certificate to your email address. And stay tuned to this discussion series that probably will invite another prominent speakers to our virtual events. Perhaps the last, Ibu Rector, you have some words to say?
Okay. Professor Lee, I wish I had listened to such a speech like I did this morning when I was in my 20s. So, but it's never too late. But it's never too late. So I understand you inspire our new professors of ITB, new scientists, young scientists. I think after this, starting tomorrow, they will come to work at 7 a.m. and then go home at 10 p.m. like you do, because you inspire them to work harder and smarter. So we hear your message that we have to collaborate more because we don't know everything. In fact, we don't know only a little thing about this world, right? So yes. We will definitely collaborate more with ITB personnel internally, and of course networking with international academics. Thank you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ibu Reni, and thank you, Professor Lee. So, Professor Lee, this virtual event has been attended by over 130 attendee from our senior to junior academic faculty members.
Wonderful.
And especially for the young faculty members, maybe don't forget to save your first wage receipt to remember. Okay, Professor Lee, we thank you to you once again.
Thank you.
And we wish you have a good health and good research always. Thank you. Yes, we will have a photo session.
Oh, okay.
Ibu Enda, thank you for reminding us. Yes, everybody. So please turn on your camera. So we will take photos. We have 6 pages. Yeah, I can do myself. Okay, ready? Page 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, page 2. Yeah, ready? Your camera. Page 2, 1, 2, 3. Once again. Okay, page 3. Your camera, please. Okay, anyway, 1, 2, 3. And page 4, 1, 2, 3. Page 5, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, all done. And Professor Lee, still have a nice weekend in California.
Thank you.
But
Thank
here
you
we
so
have
much.
to do some work. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Good morning,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.